Okay, so I have some exciting brand new PC hardware to share with you guys today. ASRock reached out to me and was like,
"Hey, we're releasing a brand new line of PC parts. Want to be one of the first to review them?" Heck yeah, let's do this!
Today we're going to be building a brand new PC using the new Phantom Gaming line of hardware just released by ASRock. So ASRock has partnered with Cooler Master and T-Force to release their own new line of Phantom Gaming hardware. This stuff looks really sweet, so I'm really excited to get it put together. It's all RGB because, of course, gaming, and it's cool, so why not? This is going to be a PC that's going to be great for gaming, but also be able to do a lot of workstation tasks, as it's going to be featuring the RX AMD 570, 8GB overclocked edition, as well as the Intel 9900K, which comes with 8 cores, 16 threads, and is hands down the fastest core processor available on the market today. So in this video, I'm going to kind of go over the hardware I'm going to be using in this PC, kind of looking over what the specs are and what it will be good at, and then I'm going to time-lapse the build, as I already have a video on how to build your own PC if you guys want to check that out wherever it is. Then I'll finish off by showing you guys the finished build and maybe even running a few benchmarks at the end just to see what kind of performance we get out of the Phantom Gaming line of PC hardware. All in all, this is going to be about $1,000 to $1,200 PC, as we're going to be using the 9900K, but of course you could always use a different 9th gen processor in this PC and just get by with a few less cores and a little bit less cost. So let's quick take a look at some of this cool hardware behind me. Starting off, we have the Phantom Gaming edition of the Cooler Master Box K500. You might remember me building in a similar case from Cooler Master in my How to Build a PC guide. In that video, I really enjoyed working with it and it was really easy, so I'm expecting this to be a really good case to work in. Honestly, make this the coolest case I have built in yet, so I'm excited to get started with that. Plus, it has great cooling with a well-vented top, 2 140mm rads in the front, vented in the front as well, and of course, we have, what is that, a 140mm fan in the back as well, so cooling should not be a problem. Powering this whole Phantom Gaming PC is, of course, the ASRock Phantom Gaming Z390. Again, this motherboard stays with the red and gray look of the Phantom Gaming line. It looks to have some really cool RGB features. I have built multiple PCs now with ASRock motherboards, and I can say I've never had a problem. It has everything you'd expect from a modern 2019 motherboard. Next up for graphics, we have the Radeon 570 from AMD. This is again ASRock's own line of the RX 570 overclocked 8GB edition, so it should be a good gaming card as well as a good workstation card. The RX 570 and 580 cards are very great in Blender, I've heard. Haven't had a chance to test it myself, so I'm excited to have one of these on my hands now that I can do some benchmarking with. It comes pre-overclocked, and it features 2 fans for ultimate cooling. Then powering all these parts, we have the Cooler Master 550. This is an 80 plus gold rated power supply that comes with a 5-year warranty, so no worries with this thing. It should definitely get the job done nicely. And for the heart of this build, we have the Intel i9-9900K. I'd like to thank Intel for sending this over for this build. I'm also really excited to be using this in a new video coming soon where I'm going to compare it to Ryzen CPUs and see if that higher core clock speed really improves tasks that you use in 3D software like animating, simulating, sculpting, all these things that are very single core dependent. I'm excited to see if the i9-9900K with its 5 GHz boost will do much better in those tasks. So I'm going to be benchmarking this against Ryzen, like I said, and stay tuned for that video coming soon. And for cooling this CPU, we have the Hyper 212 Evo RGB Phantom Gaming Edition. We all know it's probably the best affordable CPU cooler available, and now it comes with RGB integration with the Phantom Gaming Edition. So again, I'm excited to be using this in another build and seeing how cool it looks. Next, we have 16 gigs of the T-Force Phantom Gaming Edition RAM. This is DDR4 3200 megahertz RAM. Again, it's got full RGB support. This build is going to be lit, literally, and I'm really excited to see how cool it looks. Fast RAM is always great, as there are tasks that do benefit from faster RAM as well as games. And finishing it off, we have a 250GB SSD, again from T-Force, the Phantom Gaming line. And this thing has full RGB support, of course, to match with everything else. It's also the first SSD with RGB lighting that I'm going to be building with. it looks super cool again, and I'm excited to see how this looks inside the build, of course. So enough talk, I think it's time to get building. So I'm not going to show the entire process of putting together this PC, as I already did a beginner guide on how to build a PC. Video should be up in the corner there. That won't stop me from cueing some cool, groovy music and doing a time lapse of this build. Oh, and one more thing, links to all the hardware used in the description below. Bye!
Okay, it is pretty cool that CPU cooler manufacturers can still supply support for every single socket on the market today. I mean, there's a lot of sockets, so good for you, Cooler Master. Okay, hold up. This is probably the coolest looking SSD I've ever held, or possibly seen. It also feels very, like, high quality. I love this thing. Woo!
Here we have it. Now just time to clean up and give it a proper demonstration. Guys, so here's the finished build, and now that I'm finished putting it together, I can safely say that yes, this was the coolest PC I have ever built. It really looks fantastic, if you ask me. I really think that Cooler Master partnered with Azrock just really crushed the design here. It has all these sharp angles going on it and looks very modern. As far as assembling it goes, everything went together very easily. There's plenty of room in the back for cable management, surprisingly, because it's a little bit of a smaller form factor case. There's also lots of room for expansion. You can actually fit up to like 4 SSDs in the front there, all on display. And then in the back, you can actually fit 2 3.5-inch mechanical hard drives. So plenty of room for expansion as well. Everything seems to be working great. Just out of the box, I went ahead and set up all of the RGBs for the most part as well. I ran them through the reset switch on the top here. So there's actually a button now that you can just press to change the RGB colors, which is pretty cool. You don't even have to go to any software just to change the case fans, colors, and stuff. As far as the quality of the case, I think it's very good. It is slightly cheaper. At one point I did scratch myself a little bit, but I think that might have just been the CPU radiator. For the most part, all the edges are very smooth and there's nothing too sharp or anything in there. It's also very quiet. I'm noticing sitting right next to it, there's very little sound coming off of it. You might not even be able to hear it on the microphone here. So I have a fresh install of Windows 10 here, which means that because it's a fresh install, I don't have all my applications over here for benchmarking in this video. I do have an external drive that I'll plug in and try and run a few gaming benchmarks for you guys, because I know being a gaming PC, but also a workstation PC at the same time, you might want some of both as far as the benchmarks go. I want to benchmark the RX 580, or 570 I should say, from ASRock in Blender, and especially Evey, the new real-time render engine. I don't know if it's been optimized to work with AMD cards yet, so I'm going to run a quick Evey benchmark, my latest scene there. And then I also want to run a Cycles benchmark or two, just to kind of compare it to some of the other GPUs that I've benchmarked on the channel over the years. So yeah, let's get into it. A few Blender benchmarks and a few gaming benchmarks, and that'll do it. Woo! Okay, so starting off with the Blender 2.8 Beta Evey benchmark. So like I said, take it with a grain of salt, because I'm not sure that Evey has been optimized to work on AMD GPUs very much, as well as just optimizations in general. There's probably going to be more coming. But right now I have my modern interior bedroom scene that I just created on the channel here. This is a very complex scene. There's lots of reflections and light bounces going on, indirect lighting and everything else. And if I play this back in real time, you can see that I'm getting about a 2.5 FPS rate right now. So not fantastic. It's going between 2 and 3 FPS, I would say. Compared to a GTX 1080 Ti, which is a much more expensive card, of course, but that gets about an 8 FPS with this scene. That makes sense, I guess, depending on the price range of this card being around a $200 card versus the GTX 1080 Ti being more of like a $600-700 card. So, yeah, you kind of get what you pay for as far as the performance goes. Plus, this is 8 GB of RAM, which is a lot better than the cheaper options that you can get from NVIDIA. So that does make the RX 570, 580, 590 cards very pleasing for workstation tasks as well as gaming, as it comes with those 8 GB of VRAM. Okay, so I have Shadow of Mordor up here running at ultra settings, maxing out that RX 570, I'm sure. This is actually an NVIDIA title, so it's interesting. But we're sitting at a solid 60 plus FPS running at 1080p, going all the way up to 90 FPS as the benchmark progresses, which is very solid for a budget, I would say, orientated GPU running right around $200. So that's pretty decent if you don't have the bucks for one of those high-end GPUs. The RX 570, especially the ASRock edition, which seems to run very cool, is a great option. The average FPS finished here on the benchmark at 81 FPS. Okay, so I threw the Classroom Blender benchmark at that RX 570 8GB edition card, and it rendered it, as you can see here, in about 8 minutes. 8 minutes is actually not bad for a budget card around $200 to $250. Taking a look at my previous benchmarks, a 1080 takes about 6.5 minutes to render this scene. So just 8 minutes with a $200 to $250 card means that AMD RX 570, 580 GPUs with 8 GB of RAM are very good options for a budget rendering machine in Blender. So as long as I was benchmarking with this scene, I also threw the i9 9900K at Blender, and that actually performed really well too, without any overclocking or anything. It was running at about 4.6 gigahertz on all cores, it looked like, and I got a 8.5 minute render time. Now looking back at my benchmarks, I had the Ryzen 1700 benchmarked about a year ago, and that took around 15 minutes. So this shows that core speeds do mean a lot in Blender. And if you want to combine the CPU and GPU for rendering, you could get something right around 5 minutes, I'd imagine. So I can say that the RX 570 seems like a very good budget GPU for rendering in Blender. The i9 9900K is obviously great. I don't know what the value compares to yet. I haven't had the chance to benchmark a 2700X. So here we have our Time Spy results with a 427 as an overall score, a graphics score of 3,879, and a CPU score of 10,153. So obviously a better CPU score, but that's just because we have a $550 CPU in there, and we're only running about a $250 GPU. So that's going to wrap up this video featuring the Phantom Gaming PC, although it's not the last you've seen of it. Like I said, I'm still planning that massive benchmark video where I go through and I benchmark lots of everyday tasks, not only rendering, but 3D tasks like simulating, animating, sculpting, all those things that you do in Blender that may benefit from faster core speeds. So I'm definitely going to be taking that 9900K and benchmarking it in kind of those unique tests that people don't really think about, but the gigahertz that provides could easily be affecting. So stay tuned for that video coming probably within the next month or so. I'm really excited to get started on that. But yeah, not too much benchmarks for this video as I just got this built and I still have to install software and stuff. And again, I'd like to give a huge shout out to ASRock for providing me with this hardware to test and benchmark and give my thoughts on. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to check out the hardware, there is links in the description to all the hardware featured in this video. And of course, I'd like to also thank Intel for providing me with the 9900K for benchmarking and testing. It is a bit pricey, but there is no denying that it is the fastest CPU available on the market. And I haven't even gotten into any sort of overclocking, which it is a very overclockable chip. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this hardware. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I'll see you in a future video. Also, what do you think of the new studio, the first studio with a product review being done in it? And let me know what you think. So, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for some more awesome tech videos and tutorials coming in 2019, and I'll see you guys all later. Bye-bye!